So I have reviewed a number of NAS units in the past on my channel, and pretty much every time I recommend that you don't use their software and you bring something on your own. Today though, I'm taking a look at Synology, and they have a bit of a reputation in the tech industry for having really good NAS software. Also, through the magic of having two of them, I can test things like backups, replication, and high availability between them. Something that these things do amazingly well for their price point. So come along on this adventure. Couple disclaimers to get out of the way first. Synology sent me both of these units for review. No money changed hands, and they won't see the review until you do. Also, they did not send me any hard drives. I brought my own hard drives. And finally, they're having a sale coming up, so I have a link down below to some affiliate links that help me if you buy them. You don't have to use my link though, of course. Just saying. But yeah, let's see what we got here. Excuse me, sir, but I need to sit on my chair to film an unboxing. Please? Will you please vacate? So have you ever tried to film an unboxing, but someone just won't let you have your chair? Yeah, that's going on today. So let's take a look and see what we got in the box here. DS224 Plus, compact data management solution. So I've got the unit itself and some accessories. It's wrapped in some sort of fabric. Sort of peel. Oh, I messed up the peel. So here on the front of the unit, we have the front of the unit. We have two drive bays, labeled 1 and 2. Pull them out. Got a USB 3, a C button, and a power button. Not sure what the C button does. Guess we'll figure that out. Moving around to the back of the unit, we've got our two LAN ports. These are both gigabit, I believe. USB 3 and DC in 12 volt. Case says Synology with some vent holes. This is plastic, and same with the other side, also plastic. Next up, I have a few 4 terabyte Western Digital Red Plus NAS drives. Synology didn't send these. I've had these around and I use them to test things. Next, there's a little thing that says push. So I can pull out the drive tray. That was not hard. Looks like these pop out. So this is very similar to some other ones I've seen before. So there's a little pin in here that'll push into the screw hole in the drive. And then it goes through a rubber bushing here to vibration isolate the drive. So now that I got drives in it, let's boot it up and take a look at what the software looks like. So I came up here because it's a better place to string cap. And let's take a look at the installation process for the Synology software. So I can set up my new DS224 Plus. I'm just going to click install. Now let's automatically download the latest website. We'll erase those two drives. At this point, it's going to download and install Synology DSM, that's their operating system, onto your drives itself. So I'll come back when it's done. DSM is all done, so let's get started. So we're going to call it Syno1 because it's my first Synology. I'm Appleart. I need a password. And I need a password that has 3 character families. Oh, it doesn't like a 1 on the end. What's it going to tell me? I was not going to reject it. So we're automatically install important updates, and we're not going to create an account. So we have the option to install Synology Drive Office Photos. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Skip the warranty, I'll come back to that. And we have the option to do 2-factor. I really do like to see apps that care about security. So using anything from like hardware keys, certificates, 2-factor, anything to help improve password security. That's a good thing. And Synology supports YubiKeys, they support Mac OS hardware-bound keys, they support TOTP, pretty much all the good stuff. So you can do this all locally hosted too, you don't need to use their cloud service. First thing I'm going to do before I do anything else, I'm going to come to the control panel and look at networking, because I have an IP address, an IPv4, and I don't have an IPv6. So go to interfaces, and I go to my LAN 1, and edit it. You can see it's automatically doing DHCP, which is good, but then it can do VLANs too, which is kind of neat. But then if I go to v6, it defaults to turned off, and I'm not sure why they don't default to auto, but I can just change that to auto and hit OK, and it'll work fine. My address has come up, so I don't know why they don't default to that, but it's kind of irritating. So next up, I got to create a storage pool, put my data. Okay, so we have some options here, including Synology Hardware RAID, RAID 1, which is mirrors, basic, JBOD, and RAID 0. So because I only have 2 drives, I can't do like RAID 5, RAID 6. So basically my choice is, do I duplicate my data or do I not duplicate my data? So with only 2 drives, I don't have the option to do any sort of parity RAID. I can only either have a copy on both drives or a copy on one drive. There's nothing in between. So I'm going to live dangerously here, and we're going to do RAID 0. Call that the big pool. Use both 2 terabyte drives. You see we've lost a little bit of capacity to the operating system, but that's okay. Skip the drive check. We're going to use max capacity and call it the big pool. Use ButterFS. And let's go. So the next place I think Synology DSM really shines is their built-in apps. So if you're not exactly a sysadmin and you want to have some sort of business file storage, documents, that kind of stuff, DSM's got you covered. So over here on my desktop, on my NAS, I come over to Synology Drive, and this will show us what Synology Drive looks like. They have a mobile and desktop app as well. I'm just using the web one. So I can create documents here, and similar to other web-based document managers, it's not the fastest, but you can type stuff out. We got a selection of fonts. Let's see, we have the real Helvetica. That is Arial. That's fake Helvetica. We've also got spreadsheets, so I can make a budget. If I were my younger brother, he would be like income 2,000. That's too much. Then he would be like food 100. Records 1,900. That's my brother. And presentations too. So if you don't want to deal with self-hosting something like Nextcloud or OwnCloud, Synology Drive is probably something you'd enjoy. So I think this is really aimed at like small businesses and things like that want to have a local document set up, not in the cloud, not sharing their data with everyone else. And this is a really easy way to get that, and it seems pretty reliable from what I've used so far. I've been using this for a few days now, just playing with it. So yeah. So that's just my drive. What if I want to have a team folder? So let's go set those up. So to set up a team folder, I need a folder first. So here in my home directory, I've got stuff. And I can see other people's home directories, but let's make a new folder. So I'm going to go to the admin console and take this link here. So I'm going to create a new share folder. Call this project. And this, I think this is just enabling ButterFS checksums. I don't know why this isn't enabled by default, because ButterFS should just be doing this, but I guess that's just ButterFS kind of sucking. I'm personally pretty partial to ZFS over ButterFS, but to each their own. And so we'll give guests read access, and we'll give me read-write access. So I come back here, refresh, and enable that. So I don't know, we can keep versions of history, so we keep, I don't know, 16 versions. And have some way that'll tell what versions are more important, I guess, based on how big their changes are. So we'll try that and see what that does. So come back over here, refresh my team folder, and I got this. So a family member of mine used to work at a law firm for a short amount of time because they were incredibly dysfunctional, because they had no idea how to do IT. So having a Synology like this would probably help that law office to deal with their IT problems, because lawyers don't like to ask for help. At this point, I should also mention that there's a lot of other packages here. Yeah, terms of service. At this point, I should also mention that there's a lot of other packages from Synology. So I go to all packages. There's a ton of stuff here for pretty much everything you need. So they have stuff that they've produced, Synology. So their backup solutions, DNS server, DHCP server, all that kind of stuff. And then down further, you can install open source software. So they have a number of different open source packages if you need to run those. And then additionally, they have some third-party developers in here. So Plex runs on this, Tailscale, that kind of stuff, if you want to use those. But everything in this system is all developed and managed by Synology. So they're putting a lot of effort into their software here. So like just backup software by itself, we've got all these different options. Business software, you can install Radius server, LDAP server, Synology has their own SSO system if you want to use that. And virtual machines too. So now, through the magic of having two of them, I can set them up to share my documents from each other. So if one Synology fails, I have hard drive failures, that kind of stuff, my data is safely backed up. Let's see how that looks. So I got Syno1 and Syno2 here. They're both basically the same. Let's come over here to see applications, and we have Synology Drive Share Sync. So keep your NASs synced. So I can have a local NAS or remote NAS, sync them up. I'm not going to sync any folders on that side because I want to push my data from this to there. Actually, I should go over here and I should make a destination. Call it backups. So I want to back up my homes folder so I have all my users' data. And we're going to sync, upload the data to the remote Synology, keep locally deleted files. And so that'll take my homes folder here and send it to the backup folder on the other side. So now my Synology is backing itself up to my other Synology, like magic. So honestly, the big feature that I really wanted to look at in Synology DSM was their high availability mode. This takes a pair of identical Synology units and replicates them across the network. So they provide essentially a virtual IP that runs all your services, all your data storage, and the data is replicated between the two nodes seamlessly, and if one of them fails, the other one takes over. So that's a pretty cool setup that's kind of hard to do on your own with self-hosted solutions, and they've made this pretty easy. So I'm going to try and set this up between my two units. So first thing, we have to install high availability on both units. So I've got this one installed, and now we'll go and I'll install on this one. Okay, so we need two network interfaces. The heartbeat connection, this is used for the two devices that talk to each other and also for replication. And the cluster connection, this is what clients use to come in to access either the active or the passive server. So you might be familiar with other cluster systems like CoreSync that require a 3-node quorum. So this doesn't work quite the same way because we have two redundant links guaranteed. They require two separate network links. And they highly suggest that one of these is directly connected between the two boxes. So we have a direct connection link and we have a separate link that is not direct connect. So we always have two network links. So if one device goes down, we'll lose it on both of its IP addresses, the public and the heartbeat. And if one of the networks goes down, we still have that direct link. And if the direct link goes down, we still have the public network to talk to each other. So it's much harder to get into a split brain scenario because we're guaranteeing we have two links of communication. Whereas if you're familiar with other clusters, a lot of them use the same link for data and heartbeat. And if that link fails, you don't know if you're in a split brain scenario. So by having the separate heartbeat link that's dedicated, we're able to do this with just two devices. So anyway, my cluster connection is ETH1, and this one's ETH2. And I don't know which one's going to be active or passive, but I don't really care. So these things must be identical. So they are. I have two of the same model unit. They both have two 4 terabyte drives, and they're both set up in RAID 0. Okay, so yes, 1 gig, 1 gig. So LAN is going to be cluster, LAN 2 is going to be heartbeat. I also didn't add any IP addresses to the direct link, so they just have the IPv4 link local addresses. Yes, those are a thing, the 169.254. So yeah, that's fun. So we're going to do password login. Often when I'm working with open source software, I read the instructions. But for commercial software like this, I expect it to be good enough that I can figure it out. And so far I've been able to figure this one out. There's also a little help wizard in the DSM if you need help. So that's handy. Okay, cluster host name. Syno. And cluster IP. Do I have to give you a static IP? And it has to be a v4 IP. Okay, so 172.127.1. What are you going to get? 180. You can have 180. Okay, so I need to assign a static on both systems. So I might have to go back and do that. Given that it made me type in a cluster address that's v4, I don't think the cluster is going to support v6. So I guess we'll see, but I'm not super hopeful right now. Okay, I meet all the requirements. We're going to go ahead and hit next. Heartbeat interface is LAN 2. The passive server is the other one. We're using 180 as our shared address. Yes, we're going to erase the passive server. So now that I got my cluster set up, I'm back down here with the 2 units. Number 1, number 2. We're going to try to make them fail. See what happens. So over here in the UI, you see we got Syno 1, Syno 2, and our cluster is healthy. So I've got a number of things I can do here. I've got 2 powers. I could unplug either one of their powers. I've got 2 networks connecting into my broader network, and I've got the heartbeat link between them. So that's kind of 4 or 5 failure scenarios. So power active, power passive, Ethernet active, Ethernet passive, and heartbeat. So let's see what caused it to fail over. So first I'm going to start with power on the active. I think that's this one. Yep, that was the active, okay. Let's see what happens over here. So the GUI didn't change yet, so if I refresh, extended warranty plus. Well, that's a good sign. The GUI came back up. I guess I got the service backwards. This was the active, that was the passive. This is 1, that's 2. So we shut down the passive and nothing changed. Come on, boot up faster. Okay, so it looks like it's coming back up. It says it was shut down improperly. Yeah, whatever. So now switchover is suspended until it's done syncing. So just to sync all the changes from 1 to 2 to keep them in stake. And then it should be good to be online again. You can also pretty clearly see that the active one is doing all the work. The passive one is doing like literally nothing. Just kind of having a good time, while the active one's doing all of the actual applications. So in a 2-node cluster like this, we're not spreading the load by running some apps on one server or another. The active server is doing everything. The backup server is just replicating its data continuously. So now that I've figured out which one's active, let's pull the active power. So over here, the web UI has not updated, so we'll click refresh. It is thinking about life. It is not sure where that IP address is. Okay, so the passive one beeped, which usually means it boots up. Yeah, it looks like it took over. So I didn't save my session state. Yeah, so now the server 1 became the passive. So auto failover was performed. Okay. So I guess we'll boot up number 1 again and see who takes over. Does number 2 stay active, or does 1 take it back? There we go. So number 2 is still active right now, and it's syncing. So it's got to sync all the changes back up. It beeps, so it must mean it's done syncing. This has been relatively seamless so far. So this is doing everything I'd expect. It took about a minute or so for the thing to fail over, which is not bad. Proxmox cluster with like a high availability service would wait between 1 and 3 minutes before it migrated a VM or a container over. So it's on par with the workload at least. Okay, so number 2 remained active. So next up, I'm going to take number 2's internet connection, but not the heartbeat. So let's see how this goes. So I got the internet. So I'm wondering if it's going to do a full switch over when this one loses network, or if it's just going to like tunnel the traffic or something. I don't know. Maybe it'll do a more graceful switch over. So far, it seems like it's doing the same thing it did when the unit like fully failed. Okay, it beeped, so that must have been the switch over. Abnormal cluster connection. So they can still talk to each other. So I'd like to point out right now that there's a big difference between high availability systems like this and backups and RAID. So all 3 of these work together for a number of different purposes. So RAID, or data replication on the device itself, is for continuity of business. If I have a RAID array with 6 drives and I can lose 2 drives, that means that if a drive fails, I can keep going as if nothing happened. It doesn't mean I don't have to replace the drive or I don't have to keep backups. It means that the people that are working on this data can keep working on their data while I fix the problem. Then we have high availability setups like this. So this brings the RAID concept a bit higher level. So now I have 2 boxes. Maybe they have 2 UPSs. Maybe they're on different sides of the building. If I needed to work on the building or on the electrical system or networking or any sort of work, I can shut down one of these without affecting people. I don't have to pick it up and move it somewhere else in the meantime. I don't know, 3 minutes later, everything's back online and we're good. So high availability then is for dealing with failures other than disks. Failures of whole systems, network, power, those sorts of things. It gives us more redundancy to keep operating, but it's still not a backup. We're still just using this to make sure that people can keep doing their work. We don't have downtime. The next thing is backups. So backups can cover a whole bunch of different scenarios, but they can cover things like accidental deletion, ransomware deletion, things like that, when the data itself is having a problem, not necessarily the hardware, or for absolutely catastrophic hardware events. If the building burned down, for example, both of your high availability units would probably be in the same building, and they'd probably both be lost. So of course, Synology can do all three of those. This unit only has 2 bays, so my options are to do RAID 1 or RAID 0. It can do high availability, it can do backup replication, it can make those backups read-only and immutable, so that if you delete files, they stay on the backup system for a while before they get deleted. You can recover them, that sort of thing. So, after all this, what do I really think about these guys here? Coming into this video, I thought they were kind of a bad value, and I was wrong for 2 reasons. The first reason is, if you search on Amazon for a DiskStation DS224 Plus, all the top results are bundles that include hard drives. That's why they cost so much. Having realized that, this guy has a retail price of $299, and when this video goes live, it'll be on sale soon for 20% off. So I've got links for that down in the description if you care. So for that price, you get a quad-core Intel Celeron, so that's an Atom-based processor, dual 1 gigabit NICs, and 2 gigs of RAM, upgradable to 6. So I believe that means they have 2 gigs soldered, plus a memory slot for the second memory channel to add another stick of 4 gigs. Now, that seems like a pretty mediocre system to me. I mean, people are building stuff out of N100s now, and those are pretty mediocre too. But in my head, I was comparing it to this thing, which is the NAS I've personally been using for a while. And it's kind of similar on price. This one's $40 cheaper. This one has a dual-core Celeron. It has more RAM from the factory, and it is 2.5 gig instead of 1 gig. So I was thinking that like 1 gig is kind of old and dated. 2 gigs is kind of low, and those are both true. But this is also just Synology's entry-level product, and it goes way up from here. The other thing I didn't consider was that their software is actually very good. So if you're running a business and you want some no-nonsense way of replacing Google in your life, Synology Drive Sync, Docs, spreadsheets, they will do a lot of the same things. And it's all self-hosted locally on the box, and it all comes with a license that you get when you buy the hardware. Of course, not all features do come with that. Some of them are licensed separately. But the Synology Drive that I showed with the web UI, that's all included. So is the high availability, so is the sync, etc. And these, I believe, are actually the cheapest models Synology makes that do support that failover high availability. And I think it's cool that even down to this low of a price point, they still support that. As for some negatives, they physically feel relatively cheap to me. I mean, I have other NASs that are metal, and that you can feel the difference in the weight and the enclosure. It doesn't functionally make a difference, though, if it's made of metal or plastic, as long as it's well designed to have good cooling. And this guy's got a pretty big fan on the back to blow air through the CPU area and the drives. And despite the fact that this cover kind of falls off, it is actually pretty good for ventilation. They have air blowing over the drives and stuff like that. The hot swap system is very easy to use. I don't have any problems with it. Pretty easy to get the drives in. They have little rubber vibration isolators, which is nice. The rails inside the machine are metal, so there's some sort of metal cage inside the plastic shell that holds everything together. And I guess the biggest thing I can say about this is the software works very well. So if you're planning on running your own operating system, if you're into Proxmox, TrueNAS, that sort of thing, this is not the NAS for you. There are cheaper options out there that have comparable hardware or better hardware for a similar price range that you can wipe and install your own software on without feeling bad. With this system, though, if you want a good software experience out of the box, you don't want to mess with anything else on your own, this is going to give that to you. And so I think that where this really shines is for if you want reliable storage and you want to mess with other things. So if you're into building Proxmox clusters, but you want something reliable to run the base of your home, you could run this. It's perfectly reasonable. I actually have a small NAS that I ran for a long time for that exact reason. I just wanted something with reliable storage because the rest of my lab was always changing. This will give that to you. Or if you're not quite as techy, maybe if you want to give this to a friend to use as an offsite backup, you can configure it for them and give it to them. They'll be able to use it. You'll be able to use it. That kind of thing. So that's what I think about these guys specifically. Of course, I didn't review any of the higher end Synology units, but I took a look at the DSM software. I took a look at these guys from their low entry-level line. Links below if you want to see those. I also have a Discord server if you want to chat with me about anything. That'd be great. Link down below for that. I have a Ko-fi if you'd like to tip me. Thank you for that as well. And as always, I will see you guys on the next adventure.